What song do you feel surrounds you in the most complete and vivid misery imaginable? What song tops all the feelings of darkness, sadness, and loss? While this is purely a subjective question, I raise you Epilogue by the Antlers from their seminal work Hospice as the answer. I come back to this album at least weekly in the coldest months of winter. This past week it has begun to warm up, and I've managed to go for short walks. Amidst the melting snow and my wandering thoughts has been this masterpiece broadcast through my headphones, filling me with a sort of sad completeness both of the fading of winter and the passage of time. I would like to use this video to introduce the audience to the song. If there's any interest in it, I would like to make a follow-up video explaining the entire album and what it means to me, as well as my girlfriend. The album itself is fantastically unique, but Epilogue stands on its own as a wonderful track. The opening lines of the song establish both the setting and the mood. Our brains draw pictures of those dreams in which we awaken sitting bolt upright, filled with a rush after a sense of falling. In a nightmare I am falling from the ceiling into bed beside you. Importantly, the dream is identified as a nightmare. This creates a feeling of horror and discomfort. With that established, most listeners will already have a sense of where the song is going. Hospice tells the story of a hospice worker who falls in love with a terminally ill patient. Given that Epilogue is the closing track, most people can anticipate what is to happen over the course of it. In the following lines, we encounter a horrified narrator as he tries in vain to arouse his lover. Beautifully, this is recorded as, "And like before, you've got no interest in the life you lived when you were awake." This tells us that the lover was bleak and despondent even in times of life. It also foreshadows what occurs later in the song. The next stanza sees the narrator falling asleep again, only to find himself beside his lover in a morgue. Following this is a wonderful depiction of a funeral. These lines help the listener visualize the brain of the narrator as he realizes his love is no longer in our world. He subsequently describes her burial with heavy shovels, and only her head above the ground. I believe the weight of the shovels represents both the gravity of death and the weight of his own heart. Her head being above the ground indicates that the narrator still feels connected to her. Again, we see him panic and frantically try to save her. "I'm trying to dig you out, but all you want is to be buried there together." He knows it's over despite his efforts. This gives way to the chorus and its beautiful minimalism. It is simply a collection of emotions, which his ethereal lover throws at him. It represents everything they had been through, the ups and the downs. It closes with one word: apologizing. Both the narrator and his love are sorry because of what never came to fruition. The narrator is beyond sad because there will never be anything else. The chorus breaks the song in two distinct parts. The second half of the song features the narrator who has arisen from his slumber. He finds himself alone, which is the realization of his worst fear. All his memories rush back to him as he wakes up and finds that his life is inescapably sad. The final stanza before the closing chorus contains a pair of lines which have always stuck with me. They are in fact one of the biggest reasons for me wanting to create this video. "When I try to move my arms sometimes, they weigh too much to lift. I think you buried me awake, my one and only parting gift." These lines form a simple but concrete picture. They are, to me, one of the best descriptions of depression I have ever come across in music or literature. Since the death of his love, the flame of his life has nearly burned out. He lost his job and has to remain in bed, tortured by dreams which end in harsh reality and remind him of what he has lost. The song closes with one final chorus, just the same as the first one. This works to create a self-contained story. When you are completely engulfed in hopelessness and depression, it can often feel like your days are reduced to nothing. In the narrator's case, his life is now just sleeping and struggling to get out of bed. When I was a freshman in college, I had a close friend who described his own feelings for the world in this way. He actually told me that my requests to meet up and go to dinner were one of the only times he would leave his bed. That left a profound impact on me. In a way, it helped me better understand this line. The narrator is clearly quite a troubled person. Perhaps this began long before the fateful meeting with the patient he would love. Either way, she was what filled him with energy. Failing that, he's reduced to a body full of nothing, finding it easier to be asleep than face the world around him. Another reason I wanted to create this analysis was to highlight how similar some of the story elements are to Lilith. The narrator falling in love with a terminally ill patient matches up right alongside Vincent, the main character of Lilith, falling for the title character at her residence of the Poplar Lodge, a mental institution. Their relationship in both cases is one which should not exist and ends in complete disaster. I created a spoiler-free analysis of Lilith, and I would like to keep this video spoiler-free as well, but Hospice and Lilith have more than their fair share of parallels. Fans of one would love the other. If you're craving another story to help you make sense of the sadness, seek it out. Part of why Epilogue shines is that it's relatable. This is a song about heartbreak not unlike classic pop hits from the 1960s, such as Last Kiss. It tells of a fateful event which forever separates lovers. Music is no stranger to heartbreak and sadness, and so as a first-time listener, I felt like I was right at home. This track, as well as the others on Hospice, set themselves apart by laying everything on the line. The high-pitched singing of Antlers frontman Peter Silberman feels real and vulnerable. He is opening up to anyone willing to listen. Hospice is very much based on his own life and relationship with his wife at the time. You feel connected to him in a way that allows you to appreciate such a dark work. Epilogue is just one part of an intricate story. It is the final chapter of a retelling of events. The entire album, Hospice, creates such a wonderful atmospheric description. It builds a sense of creeping dread as the listener holds out, waiting for it to all come crashing down. I'm really glad to have been able to cover this song here, and as I mentioned, if there's interest, I would love to expand on exactly what Hospice means to me, as I try to unravel its story. With just 6 chords and the sparsest instrumentation on Hospice, Epilogue builds my personal favorite depiction of depression in all of music. It fittingly fades out in a combination of melodic tones and a sound which could best be described as feedback, not too dissimilar from television static. This overlay shows the chaotic and disarrayed brain of a worker who failed to save the only patient that mattered.